We have to talk lovingly to people. Obviously, if we turn people off and they cross their arms and say to heck with you, we're not going to get anywhere and we're wasting our time. And we shouldn't be wasting anyone's time. We should be effective in our communication. So, why does a pastor need to be involved? Gosh, I hope that goes without without too much explanation. You know, the pastor, we do look to our pastors as leaders. And I certainly do. When my pastor gets up there and he's talking about a subject, I'm praying that he's going to carry a message on things that really help me in my life and how I'm going to be dealing with issues of the day, and that I'm going to be doing things correctly. I think that's one of the things that we look for as, let's say, walking the straight and narrow path is defining what is the straight and narrow path. And one of the things that I've been telling folks is that I believe that as we get closer to the straight and narrow path, it becomes wider. In the beginning, it's really narrow because we're walking all over the place. We're kind of like meandering, and the straight and narrow path is just kind of like this line that's like, oh, come on, it's like a tightrope. But I believe that as we get closer to it, it gets wider, and it feels like it becomes easier. And then, of course, those last things that we have to deal with all of a sudden become more difficult. But the pastor helps us see that straight and narrow. We need someone to communicate with us the issues of the day. And if we're ignoring the specifics, and I've mentioned this before, I was talking to my daughter about the specifics. And we had come back from a prayer from a church session one day, and she was saying, oh, that was a wonderful service. And I said, yeah, it was. And it was a wonderful service. And Pastor Jeff was really on that day, I felt. But I sort of realized something, that it was, in the sense, it was kind of generic if you look at it in the sense of issues of the day. And it certainly made us feel good, but I realized that there could be a pro-abortion person sitting next to me, and that person could say, that was a wonderful service. And they could equate it to a wonderful pro-abortion service. And I'm sitting here saying, that was a wonderful pro-life service. And we could both be in the same sermon because it was generic. Now, if pastor would have said, okay, now let me be specific about this. Abortion is something that's wrong. And here's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this topic. Well, then the person sitting next to me would say, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if I like this. But then maybe the pastor continues, and then she starts to think, maybe I got to think about this. Because it's specific. Now, granted, the woman might say, I'm out of here. I don't want to hear about someone saying, end abortion. But at the same time, the woman could certainly have a seed planted in her shoe that could help her understand the right way to think about this topic. So it's important, I think, to be specific when we're giving sermons. And that's what we pray that we help identify is what are the specifics in the sermons. Some of the stats that I have in here, the situation is not getting better, only worse. Half of American women will experience an unintended pregnancy by age 45, and by current rates, about 1/3 of the women will have an abortion. This is from Alan Guttmacher Institute, and that is a wing of Planned Parenthood. So when we give statistics, and any of the statistics that you see on here, they come from the Guttmacher Institute. And the reason we pick them is because we don't want people to accuse us of making up our numbers. So we say, we're not. Go to our opponents' websites and look at what they have to say. As a matter of fact, one of the statistics that I don't have in here, but I want to bring up, is that when you look at the condom failure rates that are acknowledged by Planned Parenthood, condom failure rates are 5% at best, 10% on average, and 15% at worst. Now, when they define condom failure rates, they mean that result in a pregnancy. They don't mean it broke or whatever. They mean it resulted in a pregnancy. So if 10% is the average, that means every 10 times a person uses a condom, they wind up with a baby. And I've had many people challenge me and say, oh, we've been using them for years. It's like, yeah, but you're not taking into consideration that another person used it one time and became pregnant. And these aren't my statistics. These are the people who make the condoms, and these are the people who hand the condoms out. And if they're that bad, you can imagine how bad it could really be. One of the examples that I give is, let's say I sell pens, and you buy my pens and you say, wow, these are wonderful pens. I love these. I'd like to buy a box of these. And you do, and you put one in your pocket, and the next day you come back and you say, hey, your pen leaked all over my shirt. And I say, that's okay. I have a dry cleaning business right next door. Yeah. Give out the condoms, pregnancy. I've got Planned Parenthood right next door. I can solve that little problem. So they get us coming and going. They got us no matter which way we turn on this. And who are they selling this to the most? Our children. In our high schools and in our colleges. And if you look at the statistically where the largest number of abortions are happening, they're in the colleges. Wow. 25 years and under are the largest number of abortions. And a large percentage of those being in college and in high schools. Because they sell this lie. The kids buy it, either birth control pills or condoms, and they wind up pregnant, and then of course they wind up having abortions. So it's one of these issues that if we're not giving the information, and of course, where would we give this information? It should come from our schools, right? We would think our schools would be the ones that would give that right information, but they're not. They're the ones who are teaching this false education. So where can we get the right education? From our pastors or from our church. Youth groups, for instance. A youth group could have a program that teaches not just abstinence, but reality. I mean, abstinence is great. Let's teach that, but let's teach reality too. I heard last year there was a study that talked about, it was actually specifically about abstinence, and it was saying that when they looked at abstinence classes, they were effective, but they were much more effective when they were backed with facts that the kids could relate to and understand, instead of just saying don't have sex. God doesn't want you to have sex before marriage. But when it was facts that were along with it, hey, if you have sex, you're going to have children or unintended pregnancies, of course. There was a woman I spoke to not long ago, and when I first spoke to her, she had called me on the phone, and she actually had filled out a volunteer form, and she wanted to help us out. And so I called her up, and I had a conversation with her. And after about a half an hour or so, she had asked me about women who, I was talking about women who'd had abortions, and that we worked with women who had abortions. And she said, wait a minute, and, are you saying that you talk to women who've had abortions? I said, well, yeah, of course. We work with women who've had abortions. There are people in our various corporations that have had them, and they're strong pro-life people speaking for the life issues. And then she said, oh, I thought that you would be mad at women who've had abortions. And I said, no, not at all. I said, that's not us. And then she said, oh, well, I had an abortion. And I didn't see it coming. You would think I would have after all this time, but I didn't see it coming. And I, of course, said, well, I'm sorry to hear that, and, how long ago? And it had just taken place like a couple of months ago. And so she was actually counting down the days to her delivery date, which she was given by the doctor. And, of course, that's a tough thing. She's counting down, and she knows at the end of those days her baby's not going to arrive. And so I'm trying to be as compassionate as possible, just thinking how difficult that must be. And I asked her, I said, if your pastor, and by the way, her mother forced her to have the abortion and told her that, she was going to have to move out and live on her own and, have the abortion or else. 21 years old, mind you. And so she gave in to that. But I asked her, I said, if you were sitting in the church and your pastor would have said, hey, any of you women out there who are thinking of having an abortion, don't you even do that. I'm your guy. Come to me. Here's my phone number. If I can't help you out, I'll get you somebody that will. And I asked her, would you have still had that abortion? And she said, probably not. So, for you pastors out there who are thinking about this, think about the women who are sitting there. And they are sitting there praying, and they're, you might see them some days, and their head might be down, and they might be praying, and you're wondering what they're thinking, and they might be thinking, God, please help me. I don't know what to do. And there's the opportunity, perhaps, to say something that can help women like that. If we look at identifying the problems, we list many problems in here. We focus on abortion because we do believe that the other issues will be dealt with. But we have to start someplace, and abortion is I call it the elephant in the room. It's the biggest thing there is. The other stuff, people will get into all kinds of nuances and debate, but abortion is just plain and simple. Okay, flat out, you're killing your babies in the womb. And you can't ignore these other issues, though, but they can be difficult. Cloning is legal, and it is federally funded, and it is state funded by many states. You're just not allowed to be born. So you can be cloned 1,000,000 times over, but you're not allowed to be born. Your clones can't be born. Embryonic stem cell research is federally funded by many states and the federal government. Birth control as normal as can be. In vitro fertilization. Well, there are a lot of children who are killed through selective reduction in IVF, and parents don't know that. Parents don't realize what the procedure is, and maybe they don't want to know when they hear the word selective reduction what that might mean. I can't imagine what it would be like to really struggle with not being able to have children, and I can imagine that people might see that as a solution, but I think that perhaps when they learn selective reduction, they might change their minds. But like I say, we're going for the elephant in the room, and this other education can certainly be a part of things that people need to hear in due time and place. What are our challenges in debating the life issues? And you've probably encountered many of these yourselves. Apathy is one of the difficulties. And in our pro-life plea, you'll see a woman speak about that topic specifically, how she had someone tell her about that. And, people say, well, this is your bent. I've had people actually say that to me. This is your bent. And it's like, no, it's not my bent. This is all of ours. This is all of our issues, and it's God's issue. They might say our church is pro-life, but they don't do anything. So if we don't do anything and we say we're pro-life, well, obviously, we're not doing anything to end abortion, and that's a tough claim to make. Popularity. Boy, you don't win a popularity contest by being pro-life. That's for sure. And it's a difficult place to stand, but it's the right place to stand. And we have to stay strong because we know killing children in the womb is not a good thing. So we have to stay strong and stay determined no matter what. It's going to be tough. And especially for you pastors, like I say, I'm coming at it from the guy in the congregation. I don't know what it's like to be in the hot seat when you're up on the pulpit. And I'm praying that you guys pull it together and encourage the other pastors out there. Okay, we've got to do something about this and get the message out to them how they can be effective in helping stand for the unborn. Compassion for the mother. Evangelize is our next section. There are other challenges in debating the life issues, but those are the main ones, I think. As far as evangelizing goes, we are spreading God's word by helping people defend the defenseless. To evangelize the message of life is to take it to the congregation, to the streets, to other churches. It is one of the biggest evangelical missions, I think, we can ever have. We have to understand the life to debate, how to effectively debate the right to life. So these are things that you have to learn and that we will help you learn. Of course, we have to have compassion for the mother. There's no doubt about it. A pregnant woman will be a mother. She's already a mother. Even if the mother has a miscarriage, she was still a mother of a child that just didn't make it into the world. So we have to be compassionate in all areas of pregnancy. It's political. That's actually one of the other challenges. Yeah, it is political. But it doesn't mean that a church can't have views on political topics. And it doesn't mean that affects a 501c3. Because we're dealing it as a moral topic, not as let's take this as a political topic. That's where people make the mistake, is they think, I'm coming in and support Senator so-and-so. Let's do a campaign. We're going to put up billboards and everything else. No, that's not what we have to do. We stand for life. We encourage our congregation to know who are the representatives who are trying to end abortion and who are the representatives who are for abortion. We stick with that. we don't have to worry about stepping on the 501c3. That's the key. And that is definitely the biggest concern that I've run into in speaking to churches, is their fear of the 501c3. And we are a 501c3, Cherish Life Ministries. So if we could talk about this topic all day, every day, then I think a church can do it once a month or as frequently as they would like to. Another one of the things that's brought up, it's a clump of cells. Well, of course it's a clump of cells. We know it is. But it's also a human being that's going to eventually become a full-grown person. Just, we're talking about a stage of growth there. So, yes, there are other issues. We have them in here. And many strong ones, like rape and incest, which we deal with. And, it's going to be one of the tough ones that people bring up. So there are many other arguments there. But we're going to skip over those to go on to a couple other things that we have. A determined effort.